Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate Aviation virtual cross-country tour. Today is Air Traffic Service Day. Elevate is a nonprofit organization that helps women, youth, and underrepresented groups thrive and succeed through careers in aviation. They have programs across Canada, and they educate people and provide support to those in the aviation industry. To learn more about Elevate and the programs, you can go to elevateaviation.ca, and you can learn more about the Elevate Learning Center, mentorship and bursary programs, airtime webinars, and of course, the cross-country tour. So the cross-country tour started back in 2015 to showcase the many careers available in the aviation industry. This year, the tour is presented virtually, and we're really excited to be here. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So my name is Katie Fedovich. I am the BC ambassador for Elevate Aviation. I also work for NAV Canada. I'm a flight service specialist in Terrace, BC, and the supervisor of my site. So a little bit about NAV Canada before I introduce you to our wonderful panel. NAV Canada provides all the air traffic services across Canada. They have over 100 sites across the country. Careers for air traffic services in Canada are area controllers, tower controllers, flight service specialists, and then other careers within the company are things like technical operations, engineering, operational support, human resources, and a lot more. The goal of air traffic services is to provide safe and efficient flow of air traffic throughout the country. And as you'll know, each department or each different career has their own set of procedures. And sorry, we're going to find out more about that as we talk to our panel. So I have three wonderful women with me today. First off, we have Dawn White, who is an area controller. She's the supervisor of the traffic management unit at the Vancouver Area Control Center. She's been with NAV Canada for 30 years, and soon she's going to be moving back to the East Complex. We have Elisa Berthiam, who is a VFR controller in Villeneuve, Alberta. She's been with NAV Canada for 21 years, and she has a strong family background in aviation. However, she is the first air traffic controller. Also, we have Camille Hummer. She's joining us from Fort St. John, British Columbia. She's a flight service specialist there. She started her aviation career by coordinating traffic and movement for a de-icing company in Edmonton. And she wanted something more challenging. So she applied for NAV Canada, and she's been with the company for 4 years now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the tour.
Hi.
Morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So first off, I'm going to ask you all about your careers. Just, give us a typical day at work. And while you talk about that, I'm going to share some pictures from the industry. So let's start with Dawn.
Good morning. As Katie mentioned, I am an area controller or IFR controller. That stands for Instrument Flight Rules. And basically what that means is all the aircraft that I control have to adhere to a very specific set of guidelines, rules, as do I. So everything is very expected, probable, and predictable. I have been the last 10 years in traffic management, and my job has basically been, especially in Vancouver and Calgary airports, to manage excess demand, whether that be because of weather, equipment issues, or even in some cases, staffing shortages. And I've really enjoyed that, but it's time for me to go back to talking to airplanes, and I'm headed back, like Katie said, to the East Complex. So basically what the ANSP does, our air navigation service provider, is we have all this airspace across Canada, and we break it up into smaller chunks that one or two people could manage on their own. So in a particular period where I'm sitting down in front of a computer monitor, basically, and looking at air traffic, I will be talking to somewhere between 2 and 15 planes, but the average is probably around 8 to 12. And my complex is 4 or 5 of these pieces of smaller airspace that are similar in nature, and they put them in a group and they call it a complex. And I do what's called sequencing. So I take planes from about 150 miles from Vancouver, and if they're coming into Vancouver, I start them down. All these aircraft are coming from different directions and will be meeting at a certain point, and I will make sure that they are a specific distance apart, sequence them in trail, make sure that they don't get closer than the prescribed minimum to other aircraft, of course, or the ground. Or conversely, flights that come out of Vancouver, I will get them climbing to their final altitude and headed towards their destination. So that's hence the sequencing part of it. I have spent my whole career here in the center. We're actually out in Surrey, BC, if any of you know the location very well. And I've really loved every minute that I've spent as an air traffic controller. I've loved coming to work every single day. And I don't know that a lot of people can say that.
Thank you, Dawn. Lisa, do you want to tell us about your career as an air traffic controller?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody, once again. To complement what Dawn said, I'm a Vfr Tower Controller. So the VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules. So I'm one of the controllers that has, hands down, the best office view in the world, 360 degrees of glass, and I get to control the airport environment. And my specific Villeneuve control zone is a 5 nautical mile circle around the tower cab, so 10 miles from end to end. And I control from the ground up to 4,500 feet ASL. So at my airport, a typical day is we just deal with training aircraft. If you're learning how to fly and you're going to learn how to speak a second language, aviation, you're going to do it through a training airport environment. Villeneuve is the local training airport for the Edmonton area. For those that are listening in BC, the Vancouver's training airport, I believe, would be Boundary Bay or Langley, just to name two, just to kind of give you guys some perspectives. A typical day is, first and foremost, you flash up the coffee maker and you pour yourself a coffee and you get ready to basically help people learn to fly. We're not, as a controller, we don't fly the aircraft for the student. That's obviously the instructor's job, but we are teaching them the extra rules that goes along with learning how to fly. Sometimes it can be challenging when you have English as a second language and nerves. That's usually the two things that we deal with that's the most complicated, but we have ways and tools of getting around that no matter what. And hopefully with the nerves, we're able to soothe it because the students don't realize in the airplane that we can be just as nervous when we're training controllers even to start out in a career. My airport has a Class D classification for airspace. So what that means for us in the NAV Canada world is some airplanes have what they call a transponder, which means my radar can see them and the airplane talks to the radar, vice versa. But not every airplane is required to have that. So when Dawn was saying that she can sequence all of her airplanes from hundreds of miles back, sometimes I don't even get to see the airplanes that I'm talking to unless I can find them with binoculars. Another challenge, but definitely manageable and doable because I only have to worry about 5 miles in any which direction. We have lots of helicopter training here as well, which is kind of a specific, sorry, not site specific for Villeneuve, but very common for training airports, as well as normally in a non-pandemic experience. We have gliders that do spring training here and fall training here, which is uncommon in the western provinces of our country. I don't believe there's many control towers that deal with gliders directly, but we are one of them. And it's fun with them because when they tell you they're coming down to land, you cannot ask them to pull up and go around like you can a regular aircraft. So glider days are a lot of fun, but most days are exciting and fun in their own right because we never get the same day twice. And that's what I love about VFR the most. That's what I love about the tower environment the most is the weather is constantly changing. We get to watch storms build, come in, and dissipate and leave. We get to experience the gorgeous summer weather, beautiful winter snowfalls. It's kind of, we get the best of the whole world from a visual perspective. And when we say an issue, or when we say or issue an instruction to an aircraft, we get to see that come to life. And that's what I love. I'm a very visual person. So issuing any kind of clearance or an instruction and then getting to watch it all unfold is therapeutic for one, maybe, but it's also very gratifying, so that at the end of a busy day, you know that all of your instructions and control decisions that you made were a success, because as long as all the airplanes that went up come back down, that's a great day. And it's a rewarding career for sure. Much like Dawn, I love coming to work. I always have, and I hope to continue for another decade or two before I decide to retire.
Thanks, Lisa. So Camille, can you tell us what it's like to be a flight service specialist?
Yes, I can. Thank you again for having me. I'm really excited that I get to share what a flight service specialist does, because not a whole lot of people know about it. So I work in Fort St. John Flight Service Station, and my office view is the same as Lisa's. We're in the tower, and my control zone is 5 nautical miles as well, and we're up to 5,300 feet ASL. So I'm going to go into the two different sides of FSS. So first I'll go into Airport Advisory Service, what I do in Fort St. John, and then I'll go into the second service we provide, which is a pilot briefing service. So in Fort St. John, we provide essential information to arriving and departing aircraft. So when people call up and they want to come inbound, we help them to determine the runway that they want to land. We give them wind, altimeter, and then we also provide them with any weather information that might be pertinent to their safety for flight. We provide them with any runway closures, equipment outages, and any pertinent traffic information that might conflict with them. The main difference between FSS and air traffic controllers is that we have no control over the aircraft, so we can't tell them what to do, which can be challenging sometimes. So we just tell them about each other and help them resolve their conflicts with each other. And sometimes we can give suggestions, but they don't have to listen to us. So that's fun and can make it a little bit more complex, which is kind of awesome. And then we're also contract weather observers with Environment Canada. So we have to do hourly weather observations. And if the weather is even worse, we have to do more than one weather observations, and that can get exciting. And we also do vehicle control. So that's the one thing we get to control, which is fun. And then we go into the flight information centers where the pilot briefing services are provided. And I'll do my best to explain what they do, but they do a lot. So they're located in Kamloops, Whitehorse, Edmonton, London, and Quebec. And they provide flight planning services. So if someone was going to go from Fort St. John to Terrace, they would call up the FIC, the FSS, and say, I want to file a flight plan, and I'm going to go from Fort St. John to Terrace. I'm going to stop in Smithers for half an hour, and then I'm going to land in Terrace at 6:30, and I want you to make sure that I get there on time, and they provide alerting services for them. They also deliver in-depth interpretive weather briefing, which is awesome. They have a lot more meteorology theory than I do, so I provide pretty basic weather observations that they can really tell a pilot what's going on in between in their flight path, which is pretty cool. And then they also provide central safety services when aircraft is missing or overdue, and they help coordinate search efforts. So that's pretty awesome. And my typical day is pretty similar to Lisa's. In Fort St. John, I come in, make coffee, and I sit down, and every day is super different, which is super cool. We don't have a lot of training aircraft. We do have a lot of general aviation aircraft, a lot of helicopters, and a few scheduled main carriers like Jazz and Encore. So it can be pretty exciting. And yeah, that's FSS.
Awesome. Thank you, Camille. It's very interesting to hear about all the different perspectives in the company, or different careers in the company. So Lisa, can you tell us what skills that you have benefit your career?
I think one of the best skills would be being a team player. Also being able to make decisions on the fly, and then being willing to remake decisions on the fly if the original plan doesn't seem to be fitting into the flow of your picture that's happening out the window. But I think being a team player is huge. Reason being is I'm in the position where, with these two lovely women on this panel as well, I'm talking to some of the same airplanes Dawn's going to talk to, and I'm talking to some of the same airplanes that Camille's going to talk to. So VFR deals directly with IFR as well as FSS, but I mean, everybody deals with everybody within the ANS system across the country. And I think it's vitally important for everyone to have some level of understanding and be able to work together as a team for, again, the ultimate goal is just whoever goes up is going to land safely. So I've always grown up playing on team sports. So I don't know if that has a bit of a background to it or whatnot, but I've always been very much a team player. And I love the fact that you get to share in the gratification of knowing that you've done a good job because somebody else did a good job, and you're going to pass on a clean aircraft, is an expression that we use, to the next person so that they're going to do a good job. And it's very much interconnected and intertwined. And I think that's one of the amazing perks with this company is, you know, if you think about it from end to end, if there's an airplane that's going to leave St. John's, Newfoundland and go all the way to Vancouver, the amount of people that one pilot has spoken to, both VFR world, IFR world, and or into the FSS world, we all had a job to do to make sure that that aircraft stayed safe. So definitely being a team player is a good personality trait, as well as making those decisions when the weather does change or your traffic changes. It does happen. Sometimes people turn left instead of right. Sometimes people climb instead of descend. So that's part of us just maintaining our visual scan as to what our picture looks like out the window or what the picture looks like on our radar screen, so that we see those oopses, if you will, those human errors happening, and we try to catch them as quickly as possible so that we can then correct it. Again, going from plan A to plan F real quick. That happens on a regular basis, but we're trained for it to be able to make those decisions and, again, continue to work as a team.
Awesome. Thank you. I like that the adaptability, that's definitely something that's huge in this career. So Camille, what advice would you give somebody that was looking to apply for a career in air traffic services?
I would suggest going and getting tours at whatever facilities you can and being exposed to FSS, VFR, IFR, if you can. I mean, times are kind of hard right now as well with COVID and that, but I would suggest that, kind of getting to chat with everyone, sit down, see what you're interested in, see what sparks your interest. Be patient because the application process can be very lengthy. And also be open-minded, because sometimes when you apply for IFR, you might be offered a flight service specialist position on course, and you want to, like any career with NAV Canada is awesome. So be open-minded, and also don't get discouraged. I know there's quite a few people who have had to apply multiple times to NAV Canada. So if you're not successful the first time, try again.
Good advice. I remember visiting a flight service station before I actually applied for NAV Canada, back before I knew even what it was. So Dawn, can you tell us some of the benefits of being an air traffic controller?
Absolutely. Well, you get to work with these lovely ladies, for starters. There's two elements that I want to touch on. One is more of the monetary side and what compensation you get from NAV Canada, and the other is the mental side and the challenge that you'll get from these jobs. So to work for NAV Canada, first of all, it's full-time employment. It's very stable employment, even given the situation that we're currently in. We're all still employed. Airplanes will always continue to move, and they will always need air traffic controllers and flight service station attendants. So in terms of pay, the pay is quite good. I looked at figures from 2018. That was the most recent I could get. So even when you're training, you're paid an allowance. It starts around $40,000. And depending on the facility that you're in, how many years you have in, and that kind of thing, the pay can go up to just short of $200,000. So you're very well compensated for what you do. And there's a reason for that. And that's because you do have a lot of responsibility day in and day out. You don't get to come to work and kind of zone out. That is not a good thing. And there's a lot of other benefits that go along with the job. You know, you get dental, you get medical, there's a pension, there's lots of opportunity to do other things within the company. You can go into management. There's always training opportunities. The company encourages personal development and growth, whether that be into a different facet of your work or just leadership in general. You can get into technology. You can move about the country. It's a national company. So if you start in Vancouver, that doesn't mean that you couldn't move at some point to Toronto. There's a process by which that happens too. And you can even go from IFR to VFR. I think I might put in my application to go work where Lisa is. It sounds like it's very pretty. I don't get to look out a window. So there's that element for sure. And then just personally, and I think all the ladies have touched on it is a really rewarding job to come in and feel like you're contributing, you're part of a team. No 2 days are alike. IFR tends to be a little bit more scheduled. It's the same flights that are coming off roughly the same time. You know, Air Canada 103 is always going from Vancouver to Calgary. He's not doing anything unexpected. So, but just the timing of things can be just a little different every day. So even though it's the same, it's not quite the same. So there's always that element of, what's today going to be like? And there's always something that'll keep you thinking. And like Lisa said, you make a decision to do something and you'll watch it and you get that feeling and it's like, I don't think this is going to work. So, and then you've got to change it, and you do change it, and that makes it fun. And yeah, you can get almost competitive with yourself to see. Safety is always the most ultimate thing, but see how efficient you can be. It becomes like a little bit of a mental game. But yeah, you know, there's definitely that side and the opportunity to grow and develop as a person. And I work with such amazing people. 30 years in, and some of the things that I've learned from my coworkers and experiences I've had and opportunities to travel because of work and meet people around the world. I can't even put it into words.
Thank you. So one of the things you guys are all talking about is, you know, the challenge and the having to be adaptable and kind of work on your feet, and that huge safety factor that we have to, you know, keep in consideration. So a lot of people always say that this is one of the most stressful industries, like being an air traffic controller, being a flight service specialist is one of the most stressful jobs you could possibly have. So Lisa, I'll ask you, what would you say to that?
I usually laugh. When anybody finds out what I do for a career, that is the next statement out of their mouths for sure. And I kind of chuckle. And then I go into the fact for me, with aviation as my family's background, it has nothing to do with why I'm an air traffic controller. I kind of totally fluked into this job. Growing up, my family and extended family members are pilots, and a few of them are aircraft maintenance engineers. So there is no controllers except for me. But I often make reference to, I could not be a school bus driver. That would stress me out. I could not be a dentist. That would stress me out. So I'm kind of wired for the fluidity, if that's even the right word to use, for this job and for what we do. But I also reiterate to everybody that questions it as well, that we're trained in a way to help us deal with the stress of the job. And the bottom line for me, with my interpretation of our duties day in and day out, as long as we are doing our job, like Don says, we're not coming to work and kind of zoning out. As long as we're here, present, doing our job, challenging ourselves mentally to be better than the day before, staying in it to win it, for a silly sounding cliche, then it's not stressful because we're making decisions that work for what we see and the flow that's happening at that time. We deal with a picture that's fluid. It's like water. It's constantly moving. So we're trained in a way to make decisions that continue that movement, but we make the decisions that move it in a specific way that works for us, knowing what's coming up next. The way I kind of view our job, which also helps it be less stressful, is if you can picture yourself in your car or a pilot in a cockpit, you really only see what's out in front of you and what's in your field of view. But when you're an air traffic controller, or I would assume a flight service specialist, because we have that 360-degree view of what's happening in our airspace all the time, it is our job to know what everyone's doing and how they want to continue to do what they're doing. So with that, we're able to keep that fluid water picture moving. And it eliminates the stress for me. I certainly can't speak on behalf of anyone else because we all do, essentially we're all doing the same job, looking after aircraft or airplanes, pilots, personnel, all that stuff, but we all do it in our own unique way. We all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses in career and life. It doesn't matter, this would be no different, but we're able to minimize the stress when we're working in a fashion that, you know, we're firing on all cylinders and everyone is responding in the exact way that we need them to, that we have asked them to. And so it's not a stressful job for me in that sense. But again, we're trained for it. And I'm much happier doing this than driving a school bus.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, I guess any job can stress different people out in different ways. So, Camille, what's your favorite part about being a flight service specialist? Like, if you had to pick one thing.
One thing? Oh,
I guess you
I have
can
a
pick
little bit of a list. I mean, I think I'm going to reiterate a lot of what the other ladies are saying. I think the main thing is that no day is the same, right? So some days you can come in and the weather's crazy, so we have to deal with that, or you have a ton of traffic or runway closures or a bunch of snow on the runway, so you have to coordinate between vehicles and aircraft. So I really like that aspect of the job. Makes it a lot more entertaining. And then I also like working really complex traffic. I find it really rewarding and being efficient and making everyone happy. And it's just really, really satisfying to me. And I think also to the other ladies as well. And also learning, like we get to learn so much. We have so much opportunity within the company to advance our careers and ourselves and our skills. It's really awesome. So.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. When you work that complex traffic and it just, everything works out beautifully, it's such a rewarding feeling.
Yeah. It's hard to beat.
So, Don, can you tell us a little bit about the requirements to be an air traffic controller or flight service specialist and how you apply?
Absolutely. I can't say that I'm quite as versed on the flight service element, but definitely for the air traffic control, and I would assume for flight service as well, you need to be 18 to apply. You need to be a Canadian citizen, and you need to have your high school diploma. Once you're accepted, there's a couple more requirements that they will ask of you. They will do a medical and a criminal background check. So just be prepared for that. In terms of applying, you can go to the NAV Canada website and select recruitment, and it'll kind of take you through the process. So there's two ways to get your foot in the door. One is if you know anybody who is a controller, they can refer you and you go straight from step A to step B. If you don't know anybody that's a controller, not a problem. Still apply. There's an application process online. You fill it out. And at the end of the application process, there is a small test, so to speak. It's spatial. It test your spatial abilities, a bit of math. It's just to see if you kind of have, like Lisa said, the wiring for this job. The initial application process takes, give or take, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So just be prepared to commit to that when you get in. At that point, it becomes pass fail, and to go on to the second step. You get a pool of people that will do the first application process, and they will sit in a pool. And when you go to the second step, which is feast testing, when they decide how many people they want for the feast testing, and they do this in the different regions, they will go to that pool of people that pass that first stage, and they will take the first, let's say, 100. So if you're in the top 100, you get to go to the next step, which is that feast testing. You may pass, but if you're not in the top 100 for that time, you'll stay in the pool for 2 years, but that's where you'll remain. So then there's the feast testing. So what is feast testing? That is it stands for First European ATC Selection Test, I believe. And what it is in Europe, it's 2 days. In Canada, it is 1. And it is 1 day of basically more of those spatial tests, math, cognitive ability, that kind of thing. And it is fairly intense. And it's usually held twice a year. At least I know it's usually done twice a year here in Vancouver. From that, again, it becomes pass fail. And then there's a third step. And then the third step is now the units know who's eligible, and they will run what's called a 2-day boot camp. And they'll bring you in, and again, they'll pick X number of people, let's say 20 people, and they'll take those 20 people from the top 20 people that wrote the feast test. So again, you can pass the feast test, but if you're that 21st person in this particular example, again, you'll just sit in the pool and wait. And this is where, like Camille said, it's just, you got to be patient sometimes. The 2-day boot camp is more towards the team player aspect of it. You'll do different skills, but it's working together. It's not just you independently. And so they're seeing that team element of it. And then after the 2-day boot camp, they'll make their list and choose the 5 or 10 or however many people they're looking for the course, and you'll be offered something. And they ask you what you'd like to do. Would you like to be an IFR controller? Would you like to be a tower controller? It doesn't guarantee where you're going to go, but they do. Obviously, if you're where you want to be, you're going to be better at that than doing something that your heart's not in, right? So they do put that into consideration, but you may show tendencies where you think you'd be a great VFR controller, and they say, no, you've got the skills for IFR. We really think you should consider this. So there's a little bit of play in there, but that's basically how it works.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I remember the application process was quite different when I applied, but I certainly did put my hand up to be a flight service specialist because that's what I wanted to do, and that's where I wanted to be. So now that we've talked about how you apply, can you ladies tell me a little bit, maybe your story as to why you decided to apply for the company?
Do you want just anybody to start?
Anybody can start, yeah.
Well, okay, I'll start because I started talking. I always start talking. Like Lisa, I came from a family that was complete aviation nuts. My dad was an airline pilot, so we knew that there was no other career on the planet. That was it. That's all we ever talked about at dinner. I feel so sorry for my mother because she had nobody to talk to. And so we grew up, like a fun Saturday was Dad had to go to work. Do you want to ride with him in the jump seat? Sure. So that's what I would do. I would go to work and ride in the jump seat, and he'd give me a headset and I could listen. And it always intrigued me who was the person on the other end, because they seemed to know everything. They said something, my dad did it. So that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the person in charge. And I was really fortunate. My dad worked with a gentleman whose wife was a controller at Boundary Bay, and she had us come in and visit. And I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And then she arranged for me to go to the center, and I looked at a bunch of radar scopes, that look similar to what you see behind me. Airplanes aren't airplanes. They're just little octagons with tags. And that was it. I was hooked. Like, that's all I wanted to do. It looked like a big video game, except it had no reset button. It just kept going and going. So yeah, I was really fortunate. I came out of high school and did a year and a half at university, and it was literally putting in time, because I applied and I got through the interview, which, like you, Katie, was totally different at the time. Didn't pass the interview, but reapplied as quickly as I could, and was really fortunate and just got into it after that. So that's how I got in.
Awesome.
You want me to go next? Totally piggybacking some of Dawn's experiences as well. Absolutely. When I tell my kids, I've got 2 teenagers now, when I tell them, you know, a typical childhood summertime story about going flying out into the middle of nowhere and a beaver on floats to go moose hunting, they think I'm crazy. But that's what we did. Go blueberry picking. I was with my uncle. He'd flash up his Jet Ranger helicopter sitting in his backyard in Max, Yukon, and up to the top of the mountain we went to go pick blueberries, where the only rule we had was stay in sight of the helicopter because there were bears. So yeah, like, it's a different childhood upbringing, where my husband, I feel sorry for my husband because he's from the agricultural side of things. So when my whole family all gets together, they still only talk about airplanes. But on the flip side, when we're with my husband's family, they only talk farming. So I guess you tit for tat, you get what you give a little bit. But I lucked into this job. I'd finished high school graduation. I am from White Rock, BC. And after high school graduation, I moved out to Edmonton with my mom and dad. Because I was the baby of the family, and mom and dad just wanted to find some land and some space, so they ended up getting an acreage. And the plan was only to stay for the first year, and then I was going to go back to BC, but ultimately I met that tractor driving husband of mine, and well, history has proven that we stayed put. But while I was here in that first year, I had a job working at the Edmonton International Airport for Thrifty Car Rental. And I knew at the time when I was working there that was not going to be a permanent career, but it was a great job that I had, and I got to meet people, and I love to talk to people. So this lady came up to my counter, and she had the most amazing, intricate, twisted metal brooch into an airplane that she had pinned on her winter jacket lapel. So I commented on the brooch. Conversation started from there. It turns out she was the manager of the Yellowknife control tower. Her name was Phyllis, and it guts me to this day that I cannot remember her last name, but she was a wonderful lady. And during our conversation, she asked me for my mailing address because it was snail mail back then. And she mailed me an application process because she saw in me something that she felt the company needed. And those were her words. So I filled out the old-fashioned application, pen to paper, submitted it in the mail along with a copy of my resume, and I waited. And then I got a phone call, and then the selection process, the interview process started. And it took a year to go through all of the different steps, the different aptitude tests that we had to do, the different interviews, whether it was in person, over the phone, so on and so forth. And I was finally selected to be one of 14 to it was a bit of a pilot project, I guess, to go back to Cornwall, Ontario, where our national training school used to be located. And my class was the first VFR only class. We didn't do any IFR streaming. We didn't learn any FSS. They focused solely for 3 months VFR tower control. And I was lucky enough to be one of 5 to pass both of our final exams and our final simulation runs, and was stationed back here at Villeneuve for my first posting. And Villeneuve's been my home. I've been able to be a part of this airport, watching it grow, watching the traffic increase, watching hangars build, runway extensions happen. It's been amazing. But had I not struck up that conversation with Phyllis about her brooch on her jacket, who knows where I'd be.
That's pretty incredible.
It's a really cute story, Lisa. How I got into it, it's pretty similar. I have two family members who also work for NAV Canada. So I kind of knew about NAV Canada all growing up. They're both FSS. And so when I was 18, I applied and I was unsuccessful. And I felt maybe a little bit of pressure to apply just because my parents were pushing it a bit, because NAV Canada is a great company to work for. But I felt like my heart wasn't quite in it when I first applied, so it was probably for the best. So a couple years, I went to university for a little while, tried a whole bunch of different jobs. And then I ended up back at the Edmonton International Airport getting my real first job in the industry as a coordinator of traffic and movement for Aeromag. And the skill set that you had to use was very, very similar to what we do now. And I fell in love with the industry, and I was like, where am I going to go from here now? And the next step was to apply for NAV Canada again. And the moment I got into the sim, it was like, yes, this is it. I knew that this was going to be my career for the rest of my life. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I remember the first time I stepped into the simulator. Terrifying and exciting.
Like, so much fun.
It was so much fun. So I'll put another question out to all of you. What motivates you to do your best every day? Or are you motivated to do your best every day?
Personal challenge. I love the fact that, as we've kind of already stated, no 2 days are the same. Mother Nature will always throw a wrench in the pile. So just knowing that you're challenging yourself to be faster, more efficient, smoother, if you will, for the transition of traffic. But yeah, I think it's that personal motivation of just trying to be better. I don't think I ever strive to be the best, because you can't, and you can't ever be perfect, because it's not in human nature. But to be better, you can always be better. And I just try to be a better co-worker with my fellow staff. If we split our positions and we're working ground for the taxiing aircraft, and we're complementing our tower controller working the aircraft, I always try to make sure that I do better and help them, and vice versa. If I'm working tower and I have a ground controller, I'm always trying to be better to help not just myself to feel that satisfaction, but I always want to be better for my coworkers. So I think it's that personal drive for me is what I strive for each and every day, because you just don't know what you're going to get.
I think Lisa has summed it up perfectly. I think it's something within you to begin with, but absolutely, as she's mentioned, you're part of a team and you don't want to be the weakest link. You don't have to be the strongest link. You just don't want to be the weakest. So it is a challenge to do that every single day, because some days you're just going to be sharper, better, whatever. It's just that the bad day can't be that bad. It's still got to be at a good level. She hit it spot on.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Dawn and Lisa. You're always wanting to better yourself. And I think for me, what motivates me is also like being challenged. Well, how am I going to challenge myself and being more efficient and being a better coworker? I think we're all very on the same page.
So are you guys as excited about your career now as you were when you first started? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm terrified. I'm going back into training, so. Not really. I'm excited and I'm a little bit nervous. I mean,
you can come visit me.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Lisa. Yeah, I mean, training's hard, and it's part of the stress that Lisa spoke to. It is a stressful industry, and you're trained to handle that stress from the very day you begin, because you're given a book and it's that thick, and that's not to scare anybody away, but it is. It's part of the reality. So, yeah, I'm excited to go back and talk to planes. When I got into traffic management 10 years ago, I thought I had talked to my last pilot ever, and here I am. I'm going to go back into talking to pilots again. So that part's exciting.
On the training topic, what I love, and again, I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for anyone else, but I think it's so incredibly rewarding in a training environment that you're a part of someone's success, whether that be a pilot learning to fly, whether that be an instructor who's got his first student who's going to go solo for the first time, or whether it's us training within our own specialties. It's training makes me better. So at the moment, I'm actually training somebody. I am their on-the-job instructor. OJI is the acronym that we use. And I think it's actually more rewarding for me to be in this role than it is for the ultimate outcome of the individual training's success, only because it's my job to utilize the skills that I have acquired at my site as an expert, if you will, for the Villeneuve-isms that happen here. But the individual training is making me better because I get to stop thinking constantly the way I always think, and I get to adapt to a new way of thinking. And it's my job to follow along how they are interpreting their fluid picture. It's rewarding, it's uplifting, because I'm not sure if it was Dawn that mentioned it or if it was Camille that mentioned it. We never stop learning in this job. We never stop acquiring new information because we can't. Airplanes are becoming more and more sophisticated year after year. Our technology is becoming more and more sophisticated and advanced year after year. And therefore, we as individuals and humans are constantly evolving to strive, to that famous word, to be better with this industry as it's evolving as well. And the training is, if you have the right mindset, it's not a judgment call. It's not my judgment to see who can control and who can't. It's my job in the role as an OJI to train somebody about the isms that I just happen to know about. And you get to work in a team concept again. And I don't think we can reiterate that enough, especially women in the heavily dominated male industry. But we are training all together. We're part of this team, and it's so incredibly rewarding. And it's rewarding almost in a selfish sense, because if somebody else is successful, that means you were successful too.
Yeah, very good way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got some questions coming in here. So Camille, did you have to move away from family for your job? If so, what was the most difficult part about that?
Yeah, so I actually, I got offered a course. So I was hired in the Edmonton region, and I was actually put on a course in Ottawa, which is pretty unusual. So I already had to move away for the course, and then they posted me in Fort St. John. And they do ask you when you apply, are you willing to move? And I was pretty aware that I was going to have to move away from my family, and it was hard. I'm very close with them, but for me, it was worth it. It's definitely worth it.
Yeah, I feel for you. I had to move away from my family, from Vancouver up to the north here. So it is definitely difficult, but worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chance to apply for a job position, ACC, ATC with a European passport at NAV Canada? I actually don't know.
That one I would have to throw to the training department.
Yeah.
I can follow up with that. If that's all they have, it might be one of those situations. If there's no Canadians, then they'd look at you. There are people that work here that have come from other countries, but predominantly it's Canadian citizens we're looking for.
So Dawn, you said you had to move around into different positions. Is that normal at NAV Canada? Are there a lot of opportunities for advancement?
Define normal. When you finish your training and you're put into a complex, and you learn the ins and outs and the isms, as Lisa put it, you don't have to move. You can stay there your whole career if you wish. But like anything, it can become routine. And for all of us that like a challenge, we'll go, what else can we do? And just learning in itself, learning new airspace, new procedures, terminal versus en route control are two totally different animals. You can choose to move. So they won't force you around the country. They won't force you to go someplace else. But if it's your choice, there is opportunity. There are things called seniority bids that come out every 1 or 2 years, depending on the way staffing is around the country. And you can apply to those to move. If you wanted to get into training or something like that, once you have a few years under your belt and some experience, they'll happily take you as well, because training is ongoing. Maybe it's not going right now, but that too will soon start up again.
Is it common for airplanes to have emergencies?
In my environment, it's actually not. Practiced simulated emergencies all the time. So, but we're informed of the request, and then if we can approve it, reference the traffic that's surrounding that aircraft making that request, we practice simulated emergencies, but actual real life emergencies, in my 21 years, it's been few and far between.
All right. So is there anything else you guys want to add that hasn't already been addressed when you talk about your careers?
I love it. I think I already said that. I think we all do. I won't put words in these two ladies' mouths, but I've loved my career, and it's never been boring. And like I say, I mean, I have amazing coworkers, and you know, to have the opportunity to work with so many of these people over the years, I've been very blessed.
Camille or Lisa, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Dawn can, on that topic, she can speak for me. I agree 100% wholeheartedly.
I also agree. I love my job so much, and it's really refreshing being around like-minded people as well, because you can kind of see we're all having very similar answers to the questions, because we get into the shop for a reason, and it's awesome. And I'm just happy that I get to share it with you guys.
Actually, I do have one other thing to say. When I started many years ago, there was about 5% of the workforce was female. And I think we're up to, maybe one of you guys knows for sure, but just to look around the room right now, we're probably up pushing 30%. And girls make amazing air traffic controllers. We have a natural ability to multitask. And don't ever sell yourself short. This is a career that you can do, and you can do it very, very well, and you will be very successful at it. So don't think that, oh, I can't do it, because you can.
That's a good point. I think the numbers are certainly coming up over the years, and certainly more females are getting involved in this career. Have you guys had any unique challenges being females as you've worked in this industry?
Lisa looks like she has a story.
I'm going to keep my mute button on.
Okay, very good. I have been very fortunate because of the nature of the job. Everything is equitable. I have never dealt with men get this and women get that. It's always been fair and equitable, whether it was room for opportunity, whether it was your pay, whether it was how you did your job. Like I say, when I started, there was myself and one other female and 24 guys. And the conversation over the year has changed. When you're sitting in a position and you're talking to your neighbor, the context has changed. And I look back and I think, I'm not sure all these conversations would be gel now, but you know, it was what it was at the time, and we've come a long ways, and it's a very comfortable environment to be in, very safe.
I'm number 37 in 4 generations to be in the aviation. Like I said, it's my family, both my mom's side and my dad's side. I had no choice. This was my destiny for sure. But my grandfather used to always tease me, and he's like, well, you always seemed a little bossy as a kid, so now that you're bossing pilots around, it seems fitting. So, but that's coming from, you know, an old bush pilot who used to own his own airline service in northern British Columbia. So Grandpa always gave me the gears. And it was funny because he was always proud. Don't get me wrong. He was always incredibly proud that I took the career that I did, that I was doing what I was doing. But you could tell that back then, when, like, Dawn's got a couple years, not many, a couple years on me within the company, but it was different back then. And it was more, I think what I've received at the early stages of my career was just that shock factor. The fact that I did what I did, or that I was assertive enough on the mic to talk to a pilot and correct an error if an error was being made. One of the best advice I ever received was on the very first day I reported to my unit to talk live for the first time to a real human being on the other end of the phone. And that advice was, don't let them push you around. Just because they hear your voice, don't let them push you around. And I've always carried that with me. It was sage advice. It was great. And so later on, you know, I'd start to push back to Grandpa a little bit too, where he'd make some kind of a comment or whatnot. Well, I can't believe a woman's telling me what to do and where to go. And I'm like, well, Grandma's done it your whole marriage, so I think you're kind of used to it. So we're able to turn it around and have a lot of fun with it. And those kinds of, like, that kind of stigmatism, I don't think it exists anymore. Certainly from, and Dawn and Camille can attest to this more because they deal more with the airlines and professional pilots, where I'm still dealing with those that are learning to fly. But I don't think the stigmatism is there as much anymore. That when you hear a female voice as a controller issuing you some ATC instructions or advising you of traffic and weather and stuff like that, it's accepted and it's normal now. And there's not that divide male female anymore, which is great. And I'm so proud to be a part of that transition. I'm so proud to be a part of the industry that's still growing. Because yeah, I would agree. We're high 20s into the 30s for percentages for women to male in this industry, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think with the baby boomers starting to retire and age out across the demographics of aviation as an industry as a whole, there's so many opportunities for young women to get involved in any which aspect. You don't have to be a flight attendant. That's not the only job that's available for a female that wants to be in aviation. You can do anything you want. We've got female pilots, we've got female maintenance engineers, female controllers, female flight service specialists, female engineers from a digital tech standpoint. Anything you want to do, if you've got that skill set, you go for it, because there's not that line in the sand anymore.
Thank you. I think you made some very good points there. Thank you. So if you were talking to a high school student, is there any courses that you would suggest that they take if they wanted to become a controller?
Real life common sense will always prevail.
Yeah, I agree with Lisa. Yeah, it's kind of hard to prep for it, but yeah.
Okay. And we're getting close to the end of our hour here, but really quickly, if anybody wants to answer this one, has COVID changed the way your work has been?
Yes.
There's not as many airplanes up there.
Yeah.
We've actually had days where we're busier than Calgary International. We've had days where we're busier than Edmonton International within the province of Alberta. We haven't seen the hit that the industry has taken, but we are still a general aviation airport. If you're a single If you're a single engine rated pilot that has his own aircraft, there was nothing during this pandemic that says you can't go out and fly. As restrictions kind of changed or whatnot, training was able to resume. So we've still had training going this entire pandemic. The police helicopters and their fixed wing aircraft are still doing their aerial surveillances. The pipeline patrols are still departing and monitoring the pipelines. We've been busy. Villeneuve has logged in some great numbers on a daily basis, provided Mother Nature is kind to us because we are very weather dependent here. So no, I've been, knock on wood, I've been super fortunate during this pandemic. No, it hasn't. If anything, our numbers have gone up 10% from last January to the one that we just had.
Yeah, I think Fort St. John's kind of similar to Villeneuve, is that we went down a little bit, but then it ramped up in the summer a lot to the point where we were above our numbers from last year, I think, because of maybe the general aviation guys had a lot more time on their hands because they weren't working or had a lot of vacation. And so they've been out and about with tenacity. It's been lots of fun, actually.
Yeah, and see, I'm the exact opposite. IFR control is pretty much what you're hearing in the news. It's the Air Canadas, it's the WestJets, it's the cargos. So our traffic numbers are down considerably, down between 50 and 90%, depending on where in Canada you are. But that will rebound. It will absolutely rebound, and it will rebound quickly. And you have to look at where you're coming from. Cargo, the percentage of cargo flights are almost up to 100%, if not more than where they used to be. But that commercial element is down, but it will come back.
All right. Well, thank you. So that's the end of our hour. So I'm going to thank everybody for joining us, and thank you all for being here and talking about your careers today. I really, really appreciate it. So if anybody wants more information about Elevate, they can go to elevateaviation.ca. And if you'd like more information about NAV Canada, you can go to the website navcanada.ca. So have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.